Welcome everyone to AMTv. I'm Colinda, and today we're going to be doing our second video on the records management series, version management. So in all of my years as a records and information management professional, one of the biggest complaints I've received is, how do I know this is the most recent and up-to-date version? And when talking to people about this, I often hear or see in their file share environment, V1, V2, V3, V final, V final, V final with John's comments. It's really difficult to determine which one of those documents is the most up-to-date and the one that you should be using as your final reference. So it can be very difficult to determine this outside of the SharePoint environment. However, within SharePoint, it does it for you. And you know that you are working on the most up-to-date, accurate document because it's the one you see in the library, your document repository. So how does it work, you may ask? Well, it stores the versions in the background. As an end user, there's only two things you need to think about. One, do not name the same document a different name because that will create a duplicate copy. Keep it as the same name and be rest assured that the previous version is stored in the background, and I'll show you where and how you can access that. The other thing you need to think about is, do I just need major versions or major and minor versions? Now 95% of the time you're only going to need major versions, and that's the standard setup when you create a document library within SharePoint. So that would be V1, V2, V3. If you do need minor and major versions, that would be V1.1, 1.2, 1.3, V2. And that's often for more controlled documents, let's say, that undergo a review process, such as policies. And while you're working on those draft items, you still want the last major version to be available to your users. So that would be an example of when you might have minor and major versions. But for the most part, like I said, you'll only need major versioning. So again, how does this work and where is it within SharePoint? Well, let me show you. So in this library, we have several documents, but I'd want to show you where the previous versions are located. So if you noticed, I clicked on the ellipses here, or you can right click and have the same menu pop up on this file. I go to version history, and look at that. Right in front of you, you see all the previous versions of this document. And not only do you see how many versions you're at, knowing that the one in the library, version 8, is the most up-to-date and recent one. The ones previous to this, you can see when they were modified, who modified them, the size, and if there were any comments when you saved the versioning, that would be there. So this is perfect because you never lose the information. And again, sometimes you need to refer to previous versions, especially for documents such as policies. In the version history screen, you can view the properties of that version. You can restore the version to be the latest up-to-date version, the most recent one, or you can delete a previous version. If you want to actually see the version itself, you would click on the file or the link there, and that will open up the previous version so you can compare the two. You can have the one in the library, which is the most up-to-date and recent one, open, and a previous one open if you need to compare them. If you need to restore it, simply click on Restore. It's going to ask you, do you want to replace the current version? You're not replacing it as in overriding it, you are creating the next version. If then you decided, well, actually, no, I didn't want that one, you can just simply restore this one. You cannot delete the most recent one within the version history settings. You would have to do that from the library itself. So that is how the end user can see how many versions there are, determine whether or not they want to restore a previous one to the latest version, delete previous versions, or even just see the properties of the previous versions. But how do you set this up? So as the IT person who is setting up your SharePoint sites and libraries, or let's say again a SharePoint champion who would have rights to see the library settings, they would go into library settings And the second one down in the left column, version settings. And here's your version settings screen. So we'll go through these steps. Now again, generally your end user won't have access to this. They will just be able to see the versions in the previous ones. Do you want content approval for submitted items? So this could be, again, like we were discussing earlier, if you have a policy library and you need to have some sort of approval process, you can set that to yes. Here you have, and like I said, out of the box is your major versions. That's standard, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want your major and minor versions, this is where you would put that. So if I were to select major and minor, you then as well can add how many of the major versions do you want to keep and how many draft versions, so that would be your minor versions, do you want to keep. Out of the box it's set to 500, but you can set that to whatever you like. Let's hope you don't need 1,000 versions, but you never know. Down here is draft item security. So again, if you have it set to major and minor versions, this is where you can specify who can see the unpublished ones, the minor versions. So again, in the example of a policy, this is very handy. If you are working on that draft policy, it's undergoing the review process and it needs to be approved, but you only want those who can edit those minor versions, or maybe the ones who can approve it to see it. So you can change that, and then you've set your security. So generally, you would want the users who can edit the items, or like I said, the ones who can approve them as well, and maybe the author of the item to be able to see the draft items. You wouldn't generally want those who have read rights to the library. Again, if it's a policy one, you would just want them to see the final major versions. Now, require the documents to be checked out before they can be edited. Generally, you can just leave it as no, but we're going to talk about check-in and check-out in another video shortly. So we are going to go back to just saying create major versions, leave it with 1,000 is fine. And as you notice there, when I've changed it back to just major versions, you no longer have the draft item security options appearing, because anyone who has edit or read rights will be able to see the major versions because that's what it's set to. Click OK. So that essentially is how you would set up your versioning within a library, and how the end user can be rest assured that if they want to view previous versions, they can do it this way. If they want to restore a previous version, they can do it right there. If they want to view the properties, they do it right there. And if they want to actually view the document itself, they click on the link and that opens it up in its desktop application format. So thank you very much for watching this video on version management, and I hope you feel rest assured that you're always working on the most up-to-date and current version within SharePoint.